Ladies and gentlemen, I know that you are gagging. Actually, I don't know if I like that word. You're eager. You are eager to get into the brass tacks. You know, hey, Eman, you say this. Hey, Eman, what do I say here in this part of the sales process? What do I say here? Why am I saying it? What's the psychology behind it? We're going to get into all of that and more. As I said, you're going to get a 1-call close, 2-call close sales script, what to say if you're pitching a paid trial, like any sort of scenario imaginable. I got you covered. Okay, but for now, we do need to go over some sales sub-communication, because at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, what you say is only 20 to 30% of the sales call, right? And there's a lot of things that are just, a lot of it is to do with assumed authority. And if that doesn't make sense to you right now, it will in just a second. So with no further ado, let's get into the correct sales sub-communication. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, today's module is sales sub-communication. What we're going to be going over is understanding the correct sub-communication, levels of interest, transferring emotion and energy, building correct positioning, using pen and paper as a tool, boxed versus open-ended questions. So let's get into it. First things first, understanding sub-communication. So ladies and gentlemen, in the last module, we talked about what not to do. And in today's module, we're going to be talking about sub-communication that you should carry into the call, because kind of as I preface this module with, really only 20 to 30% is what you say. The other 70-80% is your tone, your cadence, and this is stuff that we'll get into in a little bit, but it's also just, what's your audio like? What's your video like? How well put together are you, right? What does your background say about you? There's a lot of these things that, as I said, it's just assumed authority. And I'll give you a perfect example in just a second. This is stuff that I want to touch on a little bit later on in the module. The thing that I want to talk about before that, and I'll be honest, when I was mapping out this phase, I didn't really know where to put this in. So I thought, I'm just going to slot it in here, is levels of interest. Okay. And this is something that's really, really important to understand, because there is a sliding scale of levels of interest. And it's very important to know what each part of that scale says about a prospect. Let me give you an example. If you have reached out to a prospect, you've been doing outreach and you reach out to them 4 or 5 times and they're flat out ignoring you, that is a 0 level of interest. That doesn't mean that they'll never be interested. It just means that they're not interested right now. Or at least there's a very, 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 very high likeliness. I mean, who knows, maybe in that 6th email, they finally decide, what, now's the time. But as I said, at that specific moment in time, when you send out those outreaches, the level of interest was 0. Another example is if a client, if you get on a sales call and you're speaking with a client and the client tells you no, or you might even be doing outreach here, and the client tells you no for this reason, and there's no real sort of opening, right? There's no real, there's really nowhere you go from here. They're like, hey, I'm not interested for this reason. Thank you, right? Like it's just a clear cut no. Anything outside of that is still a level of interest. So really those are the 2 scenarios where someone can't be swayed. Anything outside of that, the door may be shut, but there's still a little creak, a little opening, right? That's why, as I said, if a prospect tells you no, and like a hard no for this reason, then really there's not much that you can do from there, to be honest. This is especially true if you're getting on a sales call, because here's the thing, they may be going into sales call thinking, 80%, 90% chance I'm not interested, but they're still leaving some opening open, right? Otherwise they wouldn't waste their time. These are busy people. They would not waste their time on a sales call. So the answer is, may still be probably no, but they haven't fully closed off that possibility and they're still entertaining it. Otherwise they wouldn't be on that sales call. And I'll give you a perfect example. And I apologize if I keep, kind of mirroring dating and sales, but they have so many commonalities in so many different ways. Look, here's the thing. A girl does not go on a date if her level of interest is 0, like fully 0. Okay. She may not be fully, she may not be 100% feeling it, or she may be tentative, or she just may be reserved about, this person that she's going on a date with. And, same can apply, guy, girl, doesn't matter. But if they are taking the time out of their day to meet with someone in that environment, there is a level of interest there, right? Same thing with a client in a sales environment. Okay. So really, I just want to slot this somewhere within the phase, just as a big takeaway to say that, hey, if they're on the call, doesn't mean that they're 100% sold or they're bought in or this or that. They may just be window shopping. And a lot of people just window shop. You know, there's a lot of, you know, I'll give you a perfect example. My mom, you know, as hard as I've worked over the last 5 years, and, you know, really the fact that she has my Amex, I tell her, go spend, go buy whatever you want. I don't care. There's no budget. She's still a window shopper. You know, she'll spend months and months tossing and turning and thinking about this one little item, and she'll wait till it's discounted. I'm like, Mom, just stop. I work this hard to make sure that you never have to think like that ever again. But being the youngest of 7, growing up in the Soviet Union, I don't think it'll ever be out of her system. So you need to understand with clients, it may be the same thing. You know, they may be big window shoppers, but at the end of the day, they can get swayed. Okay. So really, before we get into this module, I just wanted to give you a bit of context there when it comes to these different levels of interest. So the next thing that I want to talk about when it comes to sales subcommunication is energy transfer. Now, here's the thing. You cannot transfer emotion and energy you don't possess. By the way, it's available for download right below this video, as always. Now, if we're talking about sales subcommunication, this is probably one of the biggest pieces to the puzzle. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't matter whether it's sales or, for example, this program. Someone else could present the exact same content and they could even say the exact same word. Like, I mean, in all fairness, when it comes to my programs, dozens of people try in different markets and, you know, other countries and stuff like that, but it's not the same because they can't say it with the level of conviction that I can, and they can't say it, and they can't, like, here's the thing, because I've been running my agency for 5 years. It's actually, what's the date today? I don't have the date on this. I think it's like the 27th or something, right? So next month will actually be my 5-year anniversary. So because I've been running my agency for 5 years, and because for the past 3 years, I've been running Gray Agency, right? Well, Gray Agency really more like 2 years, and the year before that was really just a glorified course business. But the point is, I've been helping people for the past 3 years. So I've seen it all, right? I've seen people's timelines. I mean, I've had people come to my program, start at 0 and end up at 100K literally 2 years later. And then I've had people come to my program that I know by name, you know, name by name basis, because I see them on the Q&A calls. And 13 months later, they're still like fucking slamming their head against the wall. And they're like, it's nothing is working. And then if month 15, everything just comes together, right? I've seen the whole time. So when I say the words that I say it with conviction, and I have full confidence and faith in you personally. So when I say it, I'm sure as you've watched all of these modules and stuff like that, I'm sure you feel this little feeling of warmth and safety, because you're like, okay, this person is just being very straight up with me. As I said, I'm here to be almost like a bit of a hype man for you, and, you know, really hype you up when it's warranted. And I'm also here to be very, give you the sobering truth. You know, I've been very harsh with you at certain times, and I've been very honest with you at certain times. And I've told you the bits that, hey, this will be difficult, but you're going to have to get through it. All right. So with that being said, the reason that you feel what you feel right now when you watch this program is because I'm transferring my energy onto you. If I didn't feel that, right? If I didn't have full confidence in you that you're going to succeed, then you wouldn't feel it. All right. And it's the same thing when it comes to your sales calls. Whatever you're feeling, it will transfer onto the client. And I'll give you some examples right here. Some of you guys don't get enough sleep. Some of you guys drink too much caffeine. So you're jittery and you're all over the place and you're frenetic and you're just, you know, everything just like chaos. And then you're transferring that onto your client. Okay. And this is why the stuff in phase 2 is so important. I mean, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about your scarcity mindset. You know, if you have a scarcity mindset and then you go into your sales calls with that same mindset, what do you think your clients are going to feel? They're going to feel scared, not willing to pull the trigger. And let's also take a look at, how do you treat service providers? How do you treat waiters? How do you treat, you know, do you start a conversation? Are you polite? Are you respectful to Uber drivers? You know, to cleaners, whatever it may be. Because the way that you treat those service providers, it's going to come straight back to you. You know, some of you guys don't even fucking bother to say, and, you know,
watch your profanity.
You know, excuse my French here. Not that I've ever been worried about it in any other modules, but like, you know, I grew up, you know, maybe it's the fact that, you know, between 2012 and 2016, when things were really tough for me and my mom, she was working a combination of multiple minimum wage jobs. At some point, we were on government benefits. So I know what it's like, you know, to have my mom come home and just like be in tears because someone was so rude to her that day. Someone treated her with so much like, as if she wasn't a human, right? So maybe that's why no matter how much money I make, I don't care who it is, you know, any places that I go to regularly, I know the cleaner's name by heart. I know the manager's name by heart. I know the owner's name by heart. And they all get the same greeting, and they all get the same time out of my day, and they get the same respect. And I think that's one of the big reasons why my clients respect me so much and my team respects me so much. And this all kind of circles back to what I said in phase 2, which is, look, the world of the outer is merely a reflection of the world of the inner. So that's why that stuff in phase 2 is so important. It's not wishy-washy stuff. Okay. So I guess kind of the thing that I want to end off this little portion of this module with is protect your energy, right? Protect your energy. And by the way, as I said, you don't need to be this gregarious, outgoing, extroverted person. You know, it's funny. A lot of people actually guess that I am, when it comes to Myers-Briggs, I'm actually an I, right? I'm an INTJ, I believe, right? I'm naturally an introvert. I get my energy by being alone. That's why from the moment that I moved out of my childhood home when I was 17 years old, I've always lived alone, because to me, I get my energy from being on my own, right? So I'm not naturally extroverted and outgoing and this and that. And my sales really is just about having a conversation, right? And you'll see that in some of the Vault modules. It really just is about having a conversation. And that's the way I do things. So when I say this statement, don't take it as, okay, I got to pump myself up and listen to some, house music or rap music and, have a couple shots of caffeine. No, all I'm saying is have good energy going into the call. Okay. Maybe listen to some music that uplifts you. For me, if I'm going into a sales call, I don't really want to be listening to rap or anything like that. There's a time and a place for that. For me, I want to be listening to some of the classics that lift me up. I want to be listening to some MJ, right? I want to be listening to some Stevie Wonder, right? This is stuff that gets me like in a really happy mood, right? So going into call, as I said, make sure that you're calm, you're collected, and make sure that if you are on the opposite end of that Zoom call, would you feel safe and secure and comforted by you if you were the client looking to sign with your agency? Next thing is building positioning. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to build positioning before it's even questioned. Or if you can't do that, at least never give a client a reason to question your positioning. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you what I mean by that. Most people are so grossly unaware of what their background says about them, of what their audio says about them, of what their video says about them, of what their lighting says about them, of what just like the little mannerisms say about them. Okay? Now, if you want a perfect example of how to get it, how to assume authority, there's a great movie called Catch Me If You Can. Leonardo DiCaprio, 2004, I believe. Now, when you watch that movie, you don't want to emulate that from a service delivery perspective. You never want to talk up your service delivery abilities. Here's the thing, I guess this kind of ties into the whole fake it till you make it. I don't believe in fake it till you make it in terms of fake it till you make it as in like, I got these results when I didn't actually, or this or that. Instead, you want to assume the authority that you would have in 3 or 4 or 5 years. Step into the person that you want to become, right? We've done a lot of visualization and we've done a lot of sort of this future pacing, this building of your most ideal version in phase 2. Step into that person. So that doesn't mean that you need to, that doesn't mean that never fake or lie about your accolades, your credibility or this or that. But when it's funny, a lot of times when clients ask, oh, can I see some case studies and stuff like that? Most of the times that's just a symptom for the fact that you gave them doubt. And if there's no doubt, then clients never really ask for this stuff, right? I've never had clients ask for, oh, can I see case studies or this and that? Because I said, when you just assume authority, I've had clients be like, and this is more a logistical question, hey, have you ever worked with, this niche? Because, they may have a very specific sort of product or something. So you want to know, do we have context for how to work with this sort of client? But apart from that, they said, I've never really had a client be like, oh, can I see some case studies? Because they said, when you assume authority, and you can assume authority by the way that, what we talked about, energy transfer. You can do that, that's kind of like that's more of a long-term, thing to look at. Let's talk about something just very, very practical. And we're just going to shoot off a couple things on the list here. So ladies and gentlemen, how to assume authority. First things first is audio and video. This is so simple, but make sure you have a clear audio and make sure you're facing a light source or you have an artificial light source in front of you. Ladies and gentlemen, this setup that you're seeing right here, I don't take sales calls like this, right? I don't have my 4K camera connector or anything like that, but I do have my Shure mic, right? And this is like a $500 mic with the Scarlett interface that needs to hook into my computer or whatever. But as I mentioned in one of the other modules, you can just get the, if you want like a really sick setup, you can get their new USB like thing that's plugged straight into your computer, right? And I think it's like $250 with the boom arm and stuff like that. Or you can just go for something cheaper like a Blue Yeti. Now it's funny, my top student integration manager at Grey Agency, this guy does very, very well, for himself in terms of living. And, all of the CPA members absolutely adore this guy, right? And he could get one of these fancy setups or this or that, but instead he just uses the Apple EarPods, the ones you get when you buy a phone or an iPad or this or that, right? And he just uses those and the quality is great from those, right? So you don't need to spend an arm and a leg. It's just, rather than your shitty computer one, can you just even just get a simple $20 or $30 mic or like some EarPods or something, right? To increase the audio. As I said, I know everyone is not in a position to, I'm very lucky, my office in my house is my 3rd and 4th floor. When a client sees this, right, they can tell this is like a fucking baller place, right? Especially considering this is my home, right? And, even in terms of like the mic and like my desk and like there's depth and there's shadows in the background, this and that. As I said, I don't use this specific lighting setup because it's just overkill when I'm speaking to a client, but they can tell, even just the hue lights, the accent lights or, that right there, most people don't realize that's actually a speaker from Bang & Olufsen. They were actually a client of mine in early 2017 to mid 2017. I did some shoots for them back when I was a creative agency in one of their Dutch branches. So yeah, I have a speaker from them, and then I just have this little like custom thing, like cover. They make many different covers and stuff like that. But yeah, just like that, that's like a little touch. And here's the thing: if you can make your, if you don't have a nice place, can you just add some nice little touches to the background just to give it a little bit of character and some depth? And if you can't do that, then at least, as I said, if you can't build something that assumes authority, can you at least squash any doubt for authority? And let me give you, some more practical examples here. Most of you guys get on and you have shitty lighting, right? Like you'll have a window here, your computer's here, and then you'll have your bed in the background. What do you think clients are thinking, right? There is nothing wrong if you are still living at home with your parents and you're working from your bedroom, but just turn the fucking desk around. Turn the desk around and just face a white wall, right? And then if you don't have any light source in front of you, get like a little a desk lamp or something, right? Because these are some of the easiest wins. Out of everything that you can do when it comes to sales, just don't ever give a client a reason to doubt your authority. And if you can even go one step above that, it really, really helps. Give a client a reason to assume authority. As I said, your audio, your video, the lighting, okay? Just even the background. Does the background look plush? You might be in a shitty $400 a month apartment, but if you're just facing a wall and you even just have some nice little trinkets or like, things in the background that just give it some depth, or even, maybe like a fairy light on one side, right? Just small little cheap things that you can get, but that, as I said, just adds a bit of character, okay? Now that's, as I said, when it comes to your background and your lighting. As I said, your audio, if you don't have much money, just get some simple EarPods or just something where the audio is very solid, okay? If you have a little bit more money, you can get something like this setup, right? This one's $500, but as I said, the one that's like the newer version as well, I think it's only like $250, or get a Blue Yeti. That's like $100, right? Just anything to give yourself some nice crisp audio. Now, when it comes to video, as I said, I don't use this, 4K camera setup when I'm taking sales calls. Instead, I just use the 1080p camera on my monitor. And when I'm abroad, sometimes I'll be abroad for 2 months, 3 months. And I don't take my monitor with me. It's very simple. I just use my computer laptop, and that's all I use. Okay. So much can be said when it comes to your audio and video. Please be acutely aware of it. And as I said, if you can't assume authority through it, then at least just don't give them a reason to doubt your authority. Next thing is background. I've already talked about this, but as I said, if you can spruce up your background so it screams authority, then do it. Have little trinkets in the background, give your room character. If you can, then just face a white background. The main thing is to make sure you don't have your bed in the background, and make sure you don't have people walking in the background. That's also super important. Next thing is subtle flex. And ladies and gentlemen, I even do this to this day, but I always mention other clients or associates of mine. I say stuff like, oh, that's so cool. One of my old clients, such and such, was based out of there, right? And this, it may be one of my old clients that's like kind of like an industry name, that I know that this person would know of them. Or oh, I actually just got off a call with one of my clients. We're pulling in 500K a month for them. And they said the exact same thing. They actually noticed the exact same thing as you did about email marketing or about deliverability rates the last year. Or they said the exact same thing about shipping times at the moment, right? These are sentences that flow with a conversation and also leave enough space for intrigue. Even just something as simple as being like, oh, you live in this city? Oh, one of my associates actually lives there. This dude is killing it, making multi-seven figures a year with such and such business. First of all, it always needs to go with the flow of the conversation. That way, the whole point is that it's a subtle flex, okay? It needs to go with the conversation. It needs to leave a bit of intrigue in their mind, but it also brings up your positioning, okay? So the other thing is, don't just be like, oh yeah, like my good friend such and such, if they're not, my good friend Tony Robbins, right? If you guys aren't good friends or you don't know this person, because then that can definitely come back to bite you in the ass. But if you have, if you worked with some clients that maybe they know, or maybe if you have some, sometimes I have clients that are doing 30 million a year, as in we're doing 30 million a year just through their ads, but like it's some of the weirdest fucking products on earth. Like you would never, ever know, right? So I can't really say, oh, such and such brand, because, they wouldn't really know about them, but I'll be like, oh, it's so funny. One of my clients who's actually doing 30 million a year, they said the exact same thing. By the way, I should totally introduce you guys, right? Like it flows in naturally with the conversation and it doesn't look like I'm saying it just for the sake of it. For example, as I said, one e-commerce owner I'm speaking with a potential client and they run a big e-commerce brand, I'll mention that other client that I have and I'll be like, I'll say all that and I'll be like, oh, I should totally introduce you guys, because then that's a reason for me to say it, right? So the whole point is it needs to come off subtle, it needs to roll off the tongue, and as I said, it builds your positioning and your authority. And bear in mind, this is something where you may not be able to utilize this that much in the first 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. But as you start to stack more clients, more business associates, more of a network, right? You can use this stuff all the time. And it's so easy. I said, you just drop it here, drop it there. And they're like, oh, that was your client? Or, oh, like that sounds so interesting. I would love an intro. Or like, oh, blah blah. It's you're just giving them enough where they're intrigued, right? But you're also not like qualifying yourself too much. You never want to be like, oh, I actually have a client that does this and this and this, and they're really cool. And by the way, did I mention that I've got a lot of clients? And you know what I mean? Like you never want to leave them with that feeling. It always needs to just flow naturally with the conversation. If it doesn't, don't try to force it, right? So that is, those are just some ways to assume authority. By the way, some other ways to assume authority is the clothes you wear. I mean, right now I'm wearing a Gadget, pocket tee. This is one of the earlier prototypes. So this is nothing special. For me, like I just wear, like I don't change what I'm wearing depending on the client who I'm speaking to, right? But and this is something that you don't need to worry about now. But maybe after a year or 2 years or 3 years, simple things like a watch. It's just the way the world works. If you've got a nice watch on and, for example, most clients won't know what this is, even though it's a very expensive watch, or actually not super expensive, but whatever. It's like a $30,000 or $35,000 watch. Most clients wouldn't know, right? For me, I'm just wearing this just because I like it, right? But a lot of times, I'll be wearing a $300,000 watch. I'll be wearing a $150,000 watch. And as you guys know, for me, my watch is a hobby, but it's also an investment that's done incredibly well. I made 50% returns from my watch portfolio, put in $1 million in, got $1.5 million back out. So, bear in mind for me, when I buy all these watches, it's actually very sensible. And, in Meridian Mastermind, this is actually some of the stuff I talk about, how to have these hobbies and still make money, and how to have some other hobbies in life. And, I've made money from a lot of alternative investments, and, how to get a lot of things that other people have to pay for, how to get that for free. But I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. Long story short is little things, even as I said, just your background or maybe a watch you're wearing, or just like, for some people, as I said, for me, like if I'm speaking to someone, and I guess for me, I'm a very subtle person, at any given time, I'll be wearing a $2,500 polo that's an exclusive Xenia collab that no one will know, right? Or I'll be wearing a cashmere Loro sweater that's like $4,000 and no one will know, right? And I guess that's just kind of my style. But, for some clients, especially some of the younger ones, if you're wearing a certain brand hoodie or this or that, they know, and it's like it's a bit of a flex. So I guess just know your crowd and know your audience. And for me and my audience, I know that even just the way that I dress. I mean, this is like I said, this is just simple white Gadget tee, and I might be wearing, as I said, a $3,000 polo, but my clients would never know, right? And I guess that's just kind of the way that I roll. But for me, it works. I understand my audience, and it works for me. So whether that be the audio, the video, and by the way, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, don't think that you need to now go out and spend tons and tons of money on having the best equipment and frugality, right? We're lean, we're frugal here, but as you go down your journey, right? It makes sense to reward yourself with the nicest audio equipment, with really good lighting, with a really good monitor, with just a really good setup that you're excited to work from every day. And as I said, that also reflects on your clients because it just builds up your assumed authority. And as I said, later down the line, you can start doing stuff like watches where it's just like immediately, like clients aren't dumb, especially if you get, a very or a very common brand like Rolex. It's just everyone recognizes that. So the next nuance that I want to go over is actually using pen and paper on the sales calls, because it serves many functions here. First of all, when I'm taking sales calls, I'm jotting down notes about the client. How much are they doing right now? How much do they want to be doing? Last month, how much did they spend on, and that's like a sort of global view, as in like their entire company, right? But then isolated just to certain ad platforms, how much do they spend on Facebook? How much do they spend on Google, right? Or maybe they just use just one platform. How much do they spend? How much do they bring back in? What ROAS multiple was it? Are they working with an agency? Are they not working with an agency? Historically, like literally I'll jot down month by month because last month is great, but I want to know as well, what does the month before that look like? What did the month before that look like? What did the month before that look like? Okay. So I can get a real understanding of the last 6 months. So I'm jotting down all this stuff. And then I'm also jotting down, because a lot of our deals these days is a base plus a percentage of ROAS, but above like a certain threshold, right? So let's say historically the client spends 100K a month, they bring back in 200K a month. They already know that they can bring in 100K a month themselves, and they've proved it over the last 4 or 5 months. So they don't need to pay us for that, right? So in those sort of instances, we'll give ourselves a 20% margin. So we'll say, hey, for the first 80K we make you, we're still charging a low, a tiny little base fee of maybe like 1,600 pounds or 2,500 pounds. But the first 80K that we make you, we're not going to charge you anything. Okay, so for the first 80K that we make you, we're not going to charge you anything. And then from there, it might be 5% return on ad spend. And let's say the goal is to bring them in 200K return on ad spend. The first 80K is free, 120K, 5%. That is what, $6,000 plus 2,500. So around 8,500, right? But this is all stuff that it's really hard to figure out in your head. And the only times where I've made offers to clients and then regretted it, and things haven't turned out well, is when I'm not writing down, notes on my pen and paper. So that's the first reason. Okay. The second reason is it actually looks like you care, right? Which I get, you do, but like very few agencies will write stuff down. They'll just go through their script and you can tell they're looking at their screen and stuff like that. And they're very robotic and this and that. With me, I'm writing stuff down. So it looks like I actually give a shit, because I said I do, but also I do half. But then also the other half is like, I'm actually just getting intel and getting my thoughts down into onto paper so I can kind of figure out the deal structure. And by the way, if you have one of those cookie cutter offers where every single client you pitch is just a flat 1,500 and you don't actually need to jot down these notes, still do it. Just write down some notes about the business, because I said it shows that you actually give a shit. And the last reason that I do it is because we've had this really weird, there's been this really weird trend over the last 4 or 5 years when it comes to sales, where it's like, it's you against the client. And it's a lot of really heavy psychological mind games. And one of the big ones is like silence and getting them to speak and this and that. But the way that people do it, and there's real merit to it, but the way that people do it is they go like they'll just look at the person. Like, let's say you're on Zoom and they want, they've made the offer and it's silence, or like they want the person to ask, okay, how do we move forward? And it's just silence. And it's just like, it's just awkward, right? Like, once again, just going back to the dating thing, if you're on a date, right, and there's comfortable silence, so there's silence where the other person is maybe just holding frame, but it's not awkward, right? That's okay. But if the person like is silent because they want you to speak, and they're almost, it's almost territorial, and you can tell they're challenging you, you're like put off by it, right? As I said, especially when it comes to service-based sales. So for me, when I actually want the other person to talk, or when I want them to ask, more about the service, or how do we move forward, I'll just write stuff down. I'll write stuff down, and then I'll look at them, and then I'll start writing stuff down again. And at some point, they're going to try to break the silence. But at least it doesn't look like you're challenging them. And, at least it doesn't look like a who has a bigger dick competition of like, who can break the silence first, or this or that, right? It helps a lot with that. So for those 3 reasons, I always use pen and paper, jot stuff down. It's it's actually a sales tool and a sales, one of the things in my sales arsenal. Next thing is not boxing yourself in. So ladies and gentlemen, always go for open-ended questions rather than direct questions, because direct questions box yourself in. Open-ended questions allow you to keep the flow of the conversation. For example, let's say you're speaking to a prospect. Rather than asking them, hey, does next Tuesday at 4 p.m. work for you? Instead go, what does the rest of your week look like? Or, hey, what does early next week look like for you? Right? Because that's more open-ended, whereas if you ask a specific day, it's like a yes or no. Whereas if you ask for like a more general time frame, then instead that gives them more space to then come in and tell you, oh, this works, this time won't work, etc., etc. Same thing with like, if you ask them a question of like, why don't you just run the ads yourself? Or, why do you even want to grow your business? This keeps things open-ended rather than, questions that, still are maybe slightly more direct, but they box you in of like, for example, do you want us to run your ads? Rather than that, you ask them, you flip it over and you keep it open-ended. Why don't you just run the ads yourself? It serves the same purpose, okay? So in general, now there's certain specific questions where of course you want to be more direct and you just want to get straight to a point. Things like, hey, what's your revenue, right? Or have you ever run ads in the past? Or have you ever worked with an agency in the past? When it comes to really sales questions, because all of those are more logistics questions, you're really just gathering information about the business. That you don't need to keep things open-ended. But when it comes to actual sales questions, that with those, you want to keep things open-ended, because as I said, it doesn't box you in, because it allows you to go in a few different directions with the sales process. So ladies and gentlemen, today's action step is I want you to look at your current setup that you call from and reassess it. Could you make it cleaner, more tidy, in a space that commands more authority? As I said, you don't need to spend thousands and thousands from day one and this and that. Just ask yourself, is this a space that commands authority, or is this a setup that commands authority? And if it doesn't, then at least can I remove any reason for them to question my authority? As I said, thing in the background, or shitty lighting, or shitty video, or shitty audio. Like, is there a way that for very cheap or almost free, could I basically just give them a reason to never question the authority? So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you took a lot from it, and I'll see you in the next one.